Welcome to this video in which I am going to be showing you the Cambridge Judge MBA application essays for the year 2020-21. So if you are looking at applying in 2020 for an intake in 2021, in this video I am going to be taking a look at all the essays, how you should be approaching, and also giving you some tips on the application process. Stay with me till the end of the video. Alright, so first let's look at what do we have for Cambridge. The fact that it's an 800-year-old university, and right from Sir Isaac Newton to you name it, you pretty much have the legacy, right? So I think that's one very important thing that Cambridge enjoys, which is basically the university connection. So when you apply to judge, you are actually part of a larger Cambridge University system. And that gives you access to a plethora of other fields. So in case you want to kind of do that, so I think that's a very key part of your Cambridge experience. In fact, you are going to be Cambridge educated for the rest of your life, right? So that gives you a kind of an access to all Cambridge alums, right? Because you are a student at Cambridge. So I think you need to look at Cambridge from that sense, not just from a B school perspective. The 1-year program, so again, a lot of you wanting a 1-year program, Cambridge kind of fits the bill. It has one intake that runs from September to September, and it just gives you a lot faster ROI, correct? You just get to get back to work a lot faster. And as you know, UK also has this 2-year work permit post your MBA, so that's a huge plus, which means once you graduate, you have about 2 years to find a job. So that's, I think, a huge plus, not just for Cambridge, but for applying to any UK university this year. One more thing is the curriculum itself is really unique. So they believe in qualitative as much as quantitative. So along with the core courses and the electives that you have, you also are expected to be part of 2 consulting projects, a final project. There are webinars, there are seminar series. So you are expected to gain education, not just in the classroom, but also outside of it. So let's look at what essays they have this year. So very interesting, they have a couple of requirements before I get into the essay. One is that they have a minimum work experience of 3 years. They say you can apply with 2 years, but still they are a slightly older class, so minimum 3 years experience. So that's one thing. The other interesting thing is in the application itself, you need to be talking about your ability to finance your MBA. So how do you plan to fund your MBA? So they want to make sure that people understand that MBA is an investment, right? Which means that you need to be able to take a loan, can't depend on scholarships. You can't say, oh, I'm expecting 100% scholarship if I were to get admitted, right? So they are looking at some sense over there. So let me get to the essay questions. There are essentially 4 essay questions, very interesting. Some of them standard, some of them a little different. So the first one, slightly longish, so I'm going to be reading it out. It says, please provide a personal statement. It should not exceed 500 words and must address the following questions. So they've given a nice sequence so that you can, what are your short-term and long-term career objectives, and what skills, characteristics do you already have that will help you achieve them? What actions will you take before and during the MBA to contribute to your career outcome? So how will you experience the MBA? And finally, it says if you are unsure of your post-MBA career path, how will the MBA equip you for the future? So let's look at what they are really looking at. So they want a career plan from you, right? They want to know a sense of, do you know where you are going, and do you know how a Cambridge will fit into that path? Right? I think it's important before you even start writing this essay to get that clarity. If you don't have that clarity, I would suggest that you talk to someone. And on that note, I want to tell you that at Crackverbal, we also have an admission services. So in case you are considering an MBA from Judge, we have mentors from schools such as Judge who can work with you one-on-one. And the way it is we believe that you having a story is as important or perhaps more important than the way you write it. So the way you write it is the words, right? So 500 words, the English and the grammar is one bit, but are you able to convince me? The other way I would like you to look at this essay is, how can you be the easiest decision for them to make? They should be able to look at your application and say, I have to get this guy in. This is a story that I'm completely convinced, right? So how do you convince them? Okay. Firstly, you need to be talking about what are your transferable skills, right? Now, these are skills that are typically, skills that can be used in multiple sectors, or these are skills that can be used in other geographies. These are skills that can be used in other industries. So what are the transferable skills? For example, if I'm a teacher, I teach the GMAT. So as a GMAT teacher, my transferable skills are not the knowledge of GMAT, but perhaps my ability to explain a question to the class, right? Now, I could teach CAT or I could teach GRE, I could teach anything, right, for that matter. But my transferable skill is that I'm still a teacher. I know what are the basics of teaching. Now, I can give another analogy, right? Not many teachers applying to a B school, but I just wanted to give you a sense of what a transferable skill is, right? Let me give you another example. So, one of my students was applying to a top school, and he had experience with an e-commerce company. And he said, look, in the last 5 years, working in India, I know how to take a technology problem to the grassroots level, right? We were delivering to people, or cash on delivery did not exist. We invented cash on delivery, right? So a lot of things that are maybe optimized for an Indian scenario, these are the kind of stories that they want to hear. This is what they want to learn. Right? If you say, look, I've got a ringside view of how things were happening in the Indian startup ecosystem, correct? That's a knowledge that they want to learn. Or I know how the financial markets in India work. Or, I understand technology. That's a transferable skill. If you are a programmer, if you know how to program in Python or R, I say you have a distinct advantage, because a lot of consulting, a lot of product management, a lot of stuff these days is about your ability to crunch data, right? How good are your skills, in that? So essentially, that's what a transferable skill is, right? So the way you need to present it is, and I'm just going to give you a rough flow of how it could work. You start off by talking about what have you actually learned in the last few years of your career, correct? Like whenever you started it. Make sure you are not repeating your resume, right? After college, I joined this company where I worked in this position. No, right? You need to tell a sense of growth. Look, when I started, I started with this technical thing, but soon I added this, then I added this. So you're now talking about all the various technical things that you have learned. When I say technical, it could also be soft skills, right? It could also be leadership, it could be stakeholder management, it could be communicating across cultures, could be anything. So now that you've given them a sense of where your journey has been, tell them, what is it that you see? This is where your short-term and long-term. So what have you learned about yourself, right? And what are you willing to bet on, right? So you say, I figured that I'm like this consultant guy, right? I can walk into a room and I can solve problems. I'm able to bring that ability to analyze, critically. Maybe that's your transferable skill. Then you talk about how your post-MBA career or your long-term goal, what is it going to be? Now, when people hear long-term goal, one thing that they do is they say, my long-term goal is to get into entrepreneurship. According to me, very vague, right? So you can't just say an entrepreneur. But at the same time, you could say, hey, Arun, it's a long-term goal. I don't have a business plan. I agree, you don't have a business plan, okay? But at the same time, you can't just say an entrepreneur. Try to think, what is the problem in the world that you're trying to solve? There is some problem in the world that you think should not exist, right? For example, personally, for me, I think democratization of education is a very, goal that I hold very personally. So, if that is what you feel, you should talk about, like, I would like to do something in this space. I would like to do something in the healthcare sector, right? Or I would like to do something in the education sector, whatever it is. Make sure you give them a sense of your long-term career objective, and you could say, in order for me to do so, and I'm just going to stick to entrepreneurship. By the way, perfectly okay if you want to say that your long-term goal is not to start up, but to work in the industry as a senior executive, like a CXO. Eventually you want to be a CEO, maybe, I don't know. That's what you want to eventually be. That's also a fair goal to have. Or you could say, you know what, once I basically get some experience doing blah, 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 my long-term goal is actually to consult the government, right, on policy matters. See, your long-term goal is personal to you. Don't try to impress the admission committee by saying that my long-term goal is, your long-term goal is whatever it is. Now, how do you tie your short-term goal? Right? See, it is like connecting the dots. You are telling a story, you are convincing them. So first you say, this is what I bring, this is where I want to, eventually do. In order for me to do that, what should I do? What is the journey should I take? Correct? I want to go to the airport, I can take Uber, I can take my own car, I can do this, right? So what is the journey? First, I need to explain where I am and where I want to go. Unless and until you explain this, you will not be able to, really say what actions you will take before and during the MBA program. So now this is where you need to talk about how specifically the resources at Cambridge are going to be utilized. Right? Now, you cannot be vague. Right? One thing that you need to avoid is avoid any sentence that could be written by anyone. Right? So one example is, Cambridge is a very old university. Sure, I mean, even the people at Cambridge know that it's an old university. What is it that you are telling them about, correct? How will it impact you, right? Is the brand equity attracting you? Is the geography attracting you? UK? Is it the fact that the particular function that you're looking at? Maybe you want to get into fintech and you want to be in London. Maybe that's your kind of attraction. Whatever that attraction be, now you need to start telling how a Cambridge MBA program is going to help you get there. Right? So we got some resources in our website, so make sure, again, description given in the link below. And also, if you want to kind of get your profile evaluated for Cambridge, you want us to give you an honest opinion of what we think, please do let us know. Again, the link is given in the description below. And then it says, if you're unsure about your post-MBA career path, how will MBA equip you for the future? So the other thing that I would like you to do is say that, if you want to talk about how COVID, and this is something that I would say is unique to people who are applying in this year, right, 2020, which is try to see if you can bring that uniqueness of the COVID. What has been the impact on your sector? How do you see disruption happening? I've had, someone who was in the space of, he was in automobiles, right? And he said the future is going to be, the whole idea that we are looking at EVs, right? That's a huge space, correct? We are also looking at driverless cars, driverless vehicles in general, a lot of technology going into that. So, talk about how, in some sense, you are equipping yourself also for that future. Right? It need not be from that perspective. You could also pick some personal aspect over here, right? So as a person, do you want to grow, right? That's also something that Cambridge can offer, right? The whole diversity part that we said, the international, or the way in which, as I said, Cambridge is known for giving you these opportunities outside the classroom. So how well you are able to utilize them. All of that would be required for this essay. 500 words, I would say you probably can keep what transferable skills to 100, 150 words. What is your post-MBA short-term, long-term goal? 100, 150 words, about 300 words over that, 250 to 300 words. Spend the rest of the 200 plus words on the whole MBA part, on the Cambridge part, correct? That's going to be this essay. The second one says, describe a difficult decision that you had to make. What did you learn from this and how have you changed as a result? Now, you have to understand that one of the reasons they are asking for such essays is they are also looking at your self-awareness. So it doesn't matter what that decision was. Whether that decision was successful, whether that decision was a failure is secondary. Because what they are looking at is what was going in your head when you took that decision. They get to know you as a person, right? So it's very important that you tell them a story, correct? So you have to craft that story, right? You have to give a background. So the way I would do is, look at it as in 5 steps, okay? So the first step would be, tell me the context to this decision. Don't directly jump into this. I had to decide between A and B, correct? So, what is the importance of this decision, right? What was the bearing? Was it the first time that you had stepped up to become a manager? Was it a time that you decided to quit your job and, go elsewhere? Was it a time that you decided to do a master's degree? Whatever the reason be. Talk about the context. Talk about the options or the parameters that you had in front of you. So now I'm describing the decision by itself. I've given the context. I'm describing the decision. I'm not partaking in it. See, you have a good 200 words, correct? So talk about how, what are the parameters in front of you. I could have done A, B, C, correct? Then talk about what eventually happened, right? So you need to give a ending to the story. So either, as I said, it could be a success story, failure story. I think you don't need to worry if it's a difficult decision. The problem is, what was the difficulty? Correct? The difficulty was that you had to let go of someone. Right? Now, that is something which is, was it a right decision, wrong decision? People are not bothered. They are looking at what was going in your head. Correct? So don't try to justify the decision. Tell them, I could have held him back. These are the things, but at the same time, I did this. It was a difficult decision, but I thought, the best thing would be to let him go because he was this. Then you talk about the reflection part, right? What did you learn from this? How have you changed, right? So then you realize that the person that you let go actually went to another place and he flourished, and he met you, let's say, a year later, and he was very happy. He said that I learned a lot from your experience, and I couldn't have done whatever I'm doing at my current job had it not been with you. That's what you learned. You learned that sometimes letting go people is not a bad thing. Maybe that was a realization that you had. So I want to know a little bit more about you. This is an example that I gave of a difficult decision of, let's say, someone letting just a difficult decision would be, should I stay true to my passion? And pursue something that I want. If that was a difficult decision, you also knew that you could not earn money and as much as you wanted, which also meant that there were some personal responsibilities that you had to take. So you have to talk about the difficulties, what I would say. I told you about the 5 steps over that. So as I said, give me the background, tell me what the parameters were, tell me what decision you took, right? What was the eventual fate? Tell me what was the result or what did you learn, correct? That is the 4th part. I learned X, Y, Z. And then the 5th part, the last one is, how have you changed as a result? Today, I am a different person than what I was at the start. See, the reason why Cambridge judges asking you this essay is also because they realize that in 1 year, a person is not going to really change much unless and until he has this ability to learn. So that's what they are really looking at. Are you a person who's sensitive, who can actually learn, who can take feedback, who can absorb the experience and the atmosphere that you're going to have there? Right? And you probably know someone in your life, someone in your career who just is insular to everything that's happening around them, right? So those people, even if they do an MBA, nothing much is going to happen, right? So that's what they're looking at. 200 words, I think you can spend 50 words multiplied by 4 or 40 words multiplied by 5, correct? And again, you would be the best judge. Whatever I'm prescribing is more recommendation, thumb rule, but while you write, whether the story is going to flow through or not, you are the best judge, correct? As I said, we do have experts who can help you. In case you do need help, please do let us know. Coming to the 3rd question, describe a time where you worked with a team on a project. What did you learn from the experience and how might you approach it differently today? Again, see the theme, learnability. Are you a person who's learning? But the second thing they're also looking at is a lot of your experience at Cambridge is going to be team-based, right? A lot of learning is team-based learning, which means they are looking at everyone contributing to a team. So that's what you need to be talking about, the experience over here. What did you learn? How might you approach? Okay, so this is what I would probably do. give it to them in, this framework that you can use to describe any story. So you have a situation. So it's called the START framework: situation, task, action, result, and takeaways. So we can adapt it a little for the third essay over here. So situation: tell me about the time that you worked with a team on a project. Okay. Now you have to tell me task. What were you doing in the project? You can't describe a project to me by saying we did this. What was others supposed to do? What were you supposed to do? I want to know what was your role. Okay. Now I want to know what were the things. Did you face challenges? We have about 200 words, so we have to pick maybe one challenge. You can't afford picking 2 or 3 challenges. Was it like people in various geographies? Was there a communication issue? Was there any other discrepancy that you challenges or issues that you faced? Okay, and then what you do, the fourth thing is you talk about what did you learn from this, right? So because of that interaction, what did you learn, right? And finally, how have you changed as a result? So that becomes your how might you approach it differently today is your last part. That's your fifth part, which is your takeaway. That today I am a different person because I realized in that project. So let me give you an example. There was a student who had written about a project. I just want to talk about what he had written so that you get some ideas. I'm not saying that this is the best story, but your story can be modeled something similar. So what he said is, there was a time when I was part of a team, and it so happened that the company was actually laying off people, correct? And he said that, I know for a fact that the management was trying to raise some rounds and, times were a little hard, but the people who were there in my team, I was trying to motivate them, right? Saying that, we had to stay together and we have to. So he spoke about how it was very stressful during that time when you are working on a project, but you still have the stress and people are kind of conflicted. What did he do, like this? So, whatever he learned from that project. Now, a learning is obviously something that you could have done differently. So you cannot say I was the rock star and I figured out everything, right? But you could say something like, okay, while doing this, I realized that, I myself was demotivated, correct? And I think, we are a project manager, we used to have these chats and all of this. If I were to look at it again, I would have probably, gone back to the management and I would have expected them to come and address the team, and I could have given some solutions to the management. Instead of us motivating each other, we could have, done some. So it could be some learning that you're looking at, right? So that's something that you can do. Again, 200 words, very tight. You have to spend about 30-40 words per each of these points. So make sure that your writing is very tight. Again, very reflective. The last essay, the fourth one, it says, if you could give one piece of advice to your 18-year-old self, what would it be? I would say this is a very interesting question. Again, it is talking about the kind of journey that you have had. So you can talk about your journey. You can, So for example, let me just try answering this question. I'm going to tell maybe a couple of examples of what I would tell my 18-year-old self. So one thing that I could tell my 18-year-old self is that, the fact that in life, it is not marks, or because back then when I was school, college, that was the biggest thing for me, that I had to academically excel in order for me to do well. I would probably tell them that, look, your learning has not stopped after school. Throughout your life you will continue learning, because I used to think once after college or after school pretty much my education is done. So that was one thing I could probably say, so you could pick that angle. Here is another angle that you could say. You could say, I remember, I was very impatient. I wanted everything happening now. Now I've realized that, things come with patience. For example, you could even advise that way, right? Like you wouldn't have found, your best job had you not switched to other companies. Correct? So you could even give something like that. So 18 years, why is that an important number to remember? Is because you are still at a point where you did not know a lot of things. Correct? So don't worry if you say, should I have not known as an 18-year-old? correct, that life is going to be very different. Don't worry, you can just assume that the 18-year-old is a slightly naive version of who you are, right? So what is it that you've learned through your experience, right? So keep it slightly personal, give some examples of how in the life this 18-year-old would face other challenges. So that's pretty much what we have for the Cambridge Judge MBA essays. I really hope you like this essay analysis. I hope you like all the content that we bring. In fact, we have MBA applications for most top schools covered on our channel. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you check out the playlist that we have. Also, make sure you comment if you have any questions. As I said, we have had students who have gone to judge. We know what it takes, so we can maybe share some insights around how we can help you with the applications. Right? So go ahead and let us know, and all the best with your application.